So we are starting this series, Genesis 1 to 11 Unfiltered. Not every part of Genesis 1 to 11 we are going to do. We're going to focus on, zoom in on certain areas of Genesis chapter 1. Unfiltered because it will be reading it in without the filter of the 21st century. Without the filter of the 20th century, without the filter of the 19th century, 18, 17, 16, 15, without filter all the way back to how an ancient Israelite would have heard Genesis chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Right? So often when we come to the Bible, we have a filter, and whether it is our modern worldview, our modern perspectives, or our modern questions that we want to ask, that the ancient Israelite did not ask. So we want to read the Bible for all its worth, but first and foremost, we want to read the Bible for all its worth, which is very importantly to read the Bible the way that it's meant to be read, the way that it's meant to be heard, from the perspective that it was written in, and from the perspective that it was written to. So that is, we'll try to remove all these filters to get to how, when the writer was writing this, what was he talking about? What were the questions of their day that they were grasping with how does Genesis answer those questions, right? So that is what we want to be doing. Today we're going to have something on the orchestra of the cosmic temple, but I'm going to spend a lot of time on setting, because it's going to set the setting for the weeks to come, and to just get us to travel back in history, right? Imagining that you are living the 21st century and into a time machine and arrive in the ancient Near East. Genesis is an ancient book written by an ancient author and written to the ancient Israelites who are in the ancient context having ancient problems. You get what I'm saying? So we are tourists, basically, right? Time travel tourists. If you were to travel to a different country that is very different from yours in terms of culture, in terms of language, in terms of worldview, in terms of values, what you do not want to do is to be an imperialist. What you do not want to do is to go there and ask, how come there's no McDonald's here, right? You're not going to ask, why don't people take off their shoes before they enter the house? You're not going to ask, you're not going to have the assumptions that you have when you're in Malaysia, right? You travel this foreign nation, into this culture that you do not know very well, unfamiliar with, completely new, foreign. So you're going to be respectful as a tourist, and the tourist guide is going to explain to you, isn't it? Oh, the reason why they do it this way is because it's this way. The reason why they drive on the wrong side of the road, the other side of the road, is because of this other reason. So without imposing our own surroundings, our own heritage, our own value system, our own understanding of the world upon that foreign culture that we are visiting. So that's what we are trying to do. We are trying to not read Genesis from the perspective of 2,000 years of church history necessarily, not from the perspective of John Calvin or Martin Luther or John Wesley or your church pastor or even me. I have been trying my very best not to read Genesis with with my own training and background and just go back in time as the writer is writing this, as the stories are being told, what exactly did they hear? Why did they tell these stories and not other stories? Well, Genesis 1 is about what is it about? It's about the creation of the world. My English Standard Version has the title "The Creation of the World." The editors helpfully, the publishers helpfully wrote that the creation of the world. And when we think about the creation of the world, we have our own understanding. What is the world? And you may have this in your mind, right? This may be what's going on in your mind, isn't it? A globe, uh, round Earth, a globe, suspended in space, spinning. Every revolution on its own axis, that's one day, and then it is traveling in a straight line but being drawn by the sun. So it orbits around the sun, and every time it makes a trip around the sun, that's 1 year. So when we think about the creation of the world, this is the picture that we have in mind, isn't it? Right? Now it would be a shame if when we read Genesis we think of this, but if the author of Genesis, when he writes it, he didn't think of this, then there will be miscommunication. So when he talks about the world, and you talk about the world, you actually mean two different things. You mean this sphere, you mean this globe, this planet called the Earth. They didn't know this was a planet. They didn't know the Earth was a planet that goes around the sun. They thought it was the other way around. So, in respect to the author, we want to see the world the way they saw it, and then read the text and say, that's why he said it that way, and begin to really appreciate the Bible for all its worth. So, okay, if this was not what he was thinking about, what was he thinking about? What was the author thinking about? He was thinking about this. This is taken from Logos Bible Software. This is the ancient Hebrew conception of the universe. When they think about the universe, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. This was what they were thinking about. The ancient Israelites divided the world into heaven, earth, sea, and the underworld. So what we have is that we have God in the heaven of heavens, and then we have some kind of a visible heaven, that because they can see that some clouds seems to be taller than other clouds, things like that. And then this is the earth. The earth is like a disc. It's flat. There's a verse that says the Lord sits above the circle of the earth. So we thought, the circle of the earth, that means the round earth. Not quite. It is round, but not spherical. Rather, it's like a disc. It's a pizza, basically. So they thought of the earth like a pizza, a circle, flat. It has to be flat. Otherwise, you're gonna fall off the edge of the earth, isn't it? If it's not flat. Okay, and then they look up. They see the sun. They see the moon. They see the stars, and they see the clouds. And then you look at the earth. The earth, well, it can't be floating in mid-air, so it needs to be fixed upon something, right? There need to be foundation. So there should be a foundation of the earth. I thought that the mountains the mountains are basically goes all the way down, right? The mountains go all the way down, and that's the foundations of the earth. Otherwise, it's not going to be very, very stable. And then what do we have? We have the seas, right? The sea that surrounds the earth. And the sea goes really, 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 really deep into the great deep, right? So, for the great deep. Now, after we die, where do we go? We get buried, right? And so as our body gets buried, our souls would go into this shadowy, in the heart of the earth kind of a thing called Sheol. Sheol is this um, gloomy, watery, dusty prison of the underworld, where after you die you go there as in a shadowy existence, and there's no return. Okay, but then the sky, and then it rains. It rains. Where does the water come from? It must be the same water. The thing of there must be there's the sea, and then there's the water. So there's water below, and there's water above. That's where the rain comes from. The rain comes from the water above. Well, okay, if the water comes from the why doesn't the water all come down and collapse upon the earth? The reason is because there is a rakia, that's the Hebrew word, there is a firmament, some kind of a tent, a dome. Obviously, it has to be something like that, isn't it? Of a structure that would hold back the waters above, and that needs to be pitched somewhere, the foundations of the heavens, right? The foundations of the heavens in the far distant, that way, and the sun, the moon, and the stars are beneath that, because sometimes when it rains you can still see the sun, you can still see the moon, you can still see the stars. So the waters above the firmament, well, how do they come down? They come down by there's these windows. You see, windows, right? So when God opens the windows, you read in Genesis 6, open up all the windows of heaven, of the firmament, then what happen? All the waters from above would come pouring down on the earth, and then it floods the whole earth. That's the way to think about it. Waters above the firmament, and there's a gate of heaven. There's a gate of heaven that we can then access the inaccessible. So when God said, "Let us go down there to see what they built," so probably God would then come down through the gate of heaven, and or when Jacob had the dream of a ladder that is on the earth, and then with the ladder's peak, towards the gate of heaven, kind of an idea, right? So this is what Genesis 1 is describing. Not the one on the left, but the one on the right. And so people, in my humble opinion, people who read Genesis chapter 1 and then try to somehow say that, try to reconcile with modern science or something like that, like, no, in order for it to be reconciled with modern science, it needs to be talking about the picture on the left. The author needs to be thinking about the picture on the left and describe the picture on the left. No, he is describing the picture on the right. Why? Because that's the way everyone thought the world was. So why doesn't God reveal the truth to them about the round earth? What I think is that it will be counterproductive if God were to reveal that to them. Imagine, let's just say this is all written by Moses. Let's say, why not? So Moses sitting there, and all of a sudden, how did he suddenly know that the earth is round, right? God just say, hey, just trust me on this one. Okay, it's a round earth. But then Moses was gonna ask God, okay, if I were to stand here, okay, I mean, when I was 4 years old, I asked that question when I first saw when I first saw an atlas globe. I asked my cousin. I remember asking my cousin one Chinese New Year, because his house has this globe. And why do people who are here fall off the earth? And I said, because there's something called gravity. And I couldn't understand that. But at least he has an answer called gravity. So if Moses were to write, there's this globe, and this is the picture that he's trying to paint in Genesis chapter 1, his readers are going to ask, hey Moses, why do people fall off the earth this way? And Moses wouldn't know how to answer that question. And they're going to spend years and years and years debating this, and they probably think that Moses was crazy, and they will throw Genesis away. It's a useless book because it's not describing this. This is their reality. This is nonsense. If Moses were to write this, so if God were to say to them, I am Yahweh, I am the Lord, I am the creator of the heavens and the earth, how is he going to say that? He is going to say, I made this, with the message being, I created the universe. Right? The message is, I created the universe. Well, he's going to say, I made this. I think that if God were to review the Bible today, he will not talk about this, because we'll look at this and say that's weird, because that's not how we think of the world. This is how we think of the world. If Genesis chapter 1 is written today, it will be written like this, because the message is still the same. That is, God says, I made this, I made all this. Right? Furthermore, the book of Genesis is not in conversation with us, with our world, our global, everything, time, the news travels 24/7 at maddening speed, with air travel and cars and high-speed rail and things like that. No such thing. Rather, this was their world. These are who they are in conversation with. Over here, we have the land of Canaan. This is where the Israelites were. And there are this small little narrow strip. Over here is desert, so who cares about this place? So we have over here some major civilization: Mesopotamia, Babylon, Assyria over here. We have some major civilization in Egypt over here. And what happened is that the Babylonians would like to have a piece of Egypt. The Egyptians would like to have a piece of Babylon. And what happened is that Israel is in the way. Alright? Israel is in the way. And basically they're a buffer zone between Egypt and Babylon. And when they have a power struggle, tussle, left, right, left, right. So sometimes Israel will be 50 years pro-Babylon, 50 years pro-Egypt, depending who's the stronger pharaoh or who's the stronger Babylonian king. That kind of a thing, isn't it? They try to play both sides in order to survive. That's basically it. So we have this dominant culture in the southwest, dominant culture in the northeast, two superpowers, Gajah sama Gajah, Canaan mati di tengah-tengah, right? So that is where Israel is located. And so over here, people are, they have they have the civilization and education, right? Advancement, and over here the same thing. And here you are a bit of a bit more backward, I suppose. And so you're easily influenced, okay, by what the Babylonian says, the Mesopotamian says. You're easily influenced by what the Egyptians say, right? So sometimes we 50% subscribe America, 50% subscribe East Asia, right? So at the same time, over here we watch Hunger Games. Over here we watch Squid Games, right? And so we try to conform. So that this this over here they produce a lot of material, writing material, a lot of ideas. A lot of ideas are generated from Mesopotamia. A lot of ideas are generated from Egypt, and here we're trying to make a living. So, which means that the ideas that they are having a conversation with did not come from this book. This is not the book that they were having a conversation with, the ancient Israelites, right? This is not the book they are having a contestation of ideas with. You see, they're not interacting with this book. They were interacting with this book. They were interacting with this book. This is the Enuma Elish. The Enuma Elish. The Enuma Elish is this probably the oldest story in the world, because the Mesopotamian civilization was like the OG civilization, isn't it? The original civilization, and it tells of the creation of the world. It is the world's oldest creation story, and it goes like this: Enuma Elish, which means when on high the heavens did not exist, when above the heavens did not exist, and the earth beneath had not come into being. So we're talking about before the creation of the heavens and the earth. There was Apsu, the first in order, the begetter of the gods, and Demiurge, Tiamat. So Apsu is a masculine primeval god, and Demiurge is and Tiamat is a female goddess of sort who gave birth to them all. So Apsu and Tiamat came together. Apsu is like fresh water. Tiamat is salt water. So Tiamat is the goddess of the sea, the goddess of the of chaos, of deep. She's often represented as a dragon, as primeval chaos itself. And the sea, because if you think about it, the sea, the earth is stable unless there's earthquake, right? It's stable, you can stand on, all right. The rivers are fine, okay. But the sea, with its waves, right? That's not stable. That's dangerous. And they didn't have like cruise ships, right? They have like small little sampans dinghies, right? And so it going into the sea at any time, you know, the sea is gonna be chaotic and you're gonna get swallowed up by Tiamat, right? So Tiamat and Apsu, they gave birth to all the other gods that mingled their waters together before Meadowland had coalesced and Red Bead was to be found. Before anything happened, when not one of the gods had been formed or had come into being, when no destinies had been decreed, the gods were created within Apsu and Tiamat. Okay, what am I talking about? So this is a pantheon in the Babylonian Mesopotamian story. This Mesopotamian story, that in the beginning was Apsu and Tiamat, and they gave birth to all the gods. Now here's the story. Two of their children were very, very noisy, and they just create a lot of ruckus. And what happened is that they really disturbed Apsu, and Apsu was really, really angry and frustrated with them because, you know, they're just 24/7 noisy. So he couldn't sleep at night and couldn't focus on his work during the day. And so he thought, okay, here's the idea, let's kill all of them. Alright, let's kill all of them. And when this news reached the gods, reached the children gods, and they were like, oh my goodness, our father wants to kill us. And so one of them, very, very smart, devised an idea and drugged Apsu and killed Apsu. Now, after Apsu dies, I said, yes, the one who want to kill us is now gone. Now, Tiamat, Apsu's wife, their mother, became really, really angry with her children for killing her spouse. And Tiamat become this devouring mother, and she vowed revenge against against her children. Now, the reason why they could kill Apsu in the first place is by trickery, right? Drugged Apsu, make him drunk. Otherwise, they couldn't have stood a chance against the father. So Tiamat knows that they're going to be up to no good when he started this war. So she go and create beasts, right? 10 beasts from the chaotic water, and then there's all kind of beasts to attack these gods, the children. And they fought and they fought and they fought and they fought. They said, like, if we keep fighting like this, we will lose. Somebody has to take Tiamat out. Somebody. And they try, but Tiamat was really, really strong. Until one of the children gods, Marduk, says, hey, you know what? Leave it to me. I'm going to kill Tiamat. And the other gods are like, okay, if you are able to kill Tiamat, our mother, then you will be in charge. And so we have this Babylonian relief. This is Marduk, and this is Tiamat being represented as this sea dragon and slaughtering Tiamat. And this is some of the beasts that Tiamat summoned, right? And so Marduk fought against Tiamat, and it was an epic battle, and Marduk managed to defeat Tiamat by the skin of his teeth. He could have lost, but then he persevered and he killed. And all the other gods celebrated his victory and his victory over the beasts. And what Marduk then did was that he slaughtered Tiamat, which is the sea goddess, right? The goddess of the deep, the goddess of of chaotic waters, of primeval chaos. And he split her body in half. The top half he made into the heavens. The bottom half of Tiamat he made into the earth. So the heavens and the earth is basically Tiamat's corpse, one on top and one below. That explains the chaotic water that is on the earth, and that explains the rainwater that can become a flood easily become a flood and drown all of us, that comes from the top. And all the gods celebrate. And then Marduk decided to create human beings to be the servants of the gods, so that the gods can do whatever they want without being pinned down by worldly tasks, earthly tasks. So human beings were created as slaves of the gods to do the things that the gods themselves find too bothersome to do. And that is the end of that story. That is the creation story that everyone knew, that everyone had in their mind, that everyone believed. Because Mesopotamia was the dominant culture, was the OG civilization. So that is the textbook that Genesis chapter 1 is trying to counter. Genesis chapter 1 is not trying to explain our Pelangi Saspadi science textbook. It's trying to be in conversation with Enuma Elish. And so it begins with, in the beginning, Bereshit. In fact, in the beginning is probably not the right translation. it will be something like went on high. Bereshit in the beginning is, if you translate it back into Babylonian, into Mesopotamian, it will be Enuma Elish. Enuma Elish went on high before the heavens and the earth was made. Before the heavens above was made, before the earth below was made. So Bereshit in beginning, or at the start, or on high. I think on high. Bereshit, Reshit means head, on the head. On head. On the top. God created the heavens and the earth. You see? Can you see it now? It's not talking to our world, it's talking to their world. It's not interacting with our textbook, they are interacting with their dominant textbook of the day. And the earth was without form and void. That's just like Enuma Elish. And darkness was over the face of the Tehom. Tehom, THM, without, once you remove the vowels doesn't matter in the ancient world, you get THM, Tehom. And that is Tiamat. The same THM is Tiamat. It's also, it's the face of the deep. The deep. The sea goddess, the sea monster, the sea dragon, the chaos. But here, there wasn't a Marduk fighting Tiamat. There wasn't a struggle. The Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the water. The Spirit of God was already ruling over it. The deep doesn't fight back against God. The deep is not in conflict with God, because the deep is no match to God. So when Jesus, for example, he was sleeping in the boat, and then the sea, was the chaos came out, Tiamat basically, and the disciples were, Lord, Master, don't you care that we're gonna die? And Jesus stood up, hovering over the waters, he surveyed the place, and then he rebuked. And the word rebuke there is personal. You don't rebuke an impersonal object. I mean, it's not like my daughter Evangeline. Sometimes she play, and then she bumped her head against the wall, and then she scolds the wall. She rebukes the wall. She hit back the wall, because that's not what's going on. So when Jesus rebuked the sea, he's rebuking like the sea as though it's a person. And the other time that this word rebuke is used in the gospel is when Jesus rebuked the demons, rebuking Tiamat, the Tehom, the deep, and said, "Be still," and everything just quietens down. The deep was no match to God. So this is basically ancient Near East trash talk, because the Babylonians were saying that their God Marduk is amazing. Marduk defeated Tiamat. That is why Marduk deserving of worship. The Marduk was worshipped by all the other gods for this great achievement. The Hebrew Bible begins with Maru. Yahweh. It's not even a contest. There wasn't even a struggle. God shows up. He's just hovering over the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw that the light was good. And God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. So we have this formless and void. This is now God constructing constructing that picture, right? Remember the picture that I showed you? That picture he's now constructing. It is not like tung 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 things come to being. It's more like um, um, like my house has this all these Lego pieces, right, in a box, and you throw all the Lego pieces on the floor, and then you slowly shape them. You shape them, right? So it's like you throw everything out and then you slowly shape them. So as you throw all of them out, it's like formless and void, and then you begin to shape them into something. So versus the formlessness, there's no structure, isn't it? So this is not a good place to dwell, right? So then let's begin to provide some structure. And the first thing that God separated was day and night. Was let there be light, and there was light, and there was day, and there was night. That's the first thing. So now we have some structure now. At least now we've got time. We've got time. Okay. And then the next day, let there be an expanse in the midst of the waters. Let there be a rakia. Let there be this firmament in the midst of the water. So the whole thing is just one single blob of chaos water. So God like cut, all right, by creating a dome in the middle that separates the waters above and the waters below. The waters above, the waters below, separated by the dome. And it was so. And God called the expanse heaven. And there was evening, and there was morning the second day. So there too, God made the sea below and the sky above by separating the water with a dome. And then it says, let the waters under the dome, under the heavens, be gathered into one place, and let the dry land appear. Yabasar, the dry land appear. And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the waters that was gathered together he called seas. And God saw that it was good. And God said, let the earth sprout vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees bearing fruit, in which is the seed, each according to its kind, on the earth. And it was so. The earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed according to their own kinds, and the trees bearing fruit, in which is the seed, each according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the third day. So the canvas is ready. The backdrop is ready. The structure that versus the formlessness. Now there is form. Now there is structure. There's day and night, sea and sky, land and vegetation. Now the problem was formless and void. So now the formlessness is settled. Now we want to settle the void problem. Now that there is an atmosphere, now we can populate each of these structure with furniture. It's like constructing a temple. First, or any building for that matter, you create the structure, the rooms. How do you create the rooms? By separating things, right? So God separate day and night, separate sea and sky, separate land and vegetation, separate land from the sea. So you're creating rooms, you're creating demarcating things. And then now you've got all your rooms ready, all your structure ready. It's time to move in the furnitures. So the first room, as it were, is like, so to speak, is day and night. So, okay, how do I fill up day and how do I fill up the night? I fill up the day with the sun, and I fill up the night with the moon and stars. So two great lights got made, one to rule over the day and one to rule over the sun, and then there is then the stars. Now on day 2, God made the sea and land, sea and sky. So on the 5th day, God made the fish to swim in the sea and the bird to fly in the air. And God saw that was good. So basically, oops. Oh, okay. So day 1 corresponds with day 4. Day 2 corresponds with day 5. And then day 3 corresponds with day 6. or day 6 corresponds to day 3. So with the land, now it produces land animals. First, God created the herbivores to eat the vegetation, and then created the carnivores to eat the herbivores, right? And all of that. So now everything is populated. If you were making a temple, the first thing you do, of course, is you build the structure, you move in the furniture, and the last thing is that you move in an idol, the idol, all right, of the god that you're worshipping. And once you move in the idol, that is the main inhabitant of this temple, then that particular god that you're worshipping is said to be resting on his temple. How do we know he's resting on his temple? By this representation of that god, this idol. The word idol in the Hebrew is the word image. Image. So after making the structure and the furniture, putting in the furniture, God made his representation. God made his idol, his image bearers, something that bears his image. All right, just as man-made idols are meant to be a representation bearing the image of the god that they're worshipping. Here, instead of this man-made stuff, we have the human. Verse 26. Then God said, let us make humanity in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion, let them have authority over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the heavens, over the livestock, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image he created him. Male and female, he created these human beings, these image bearers of God, moving in the idol. And then what happens? Thus, the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the seventh day, God finished his work that he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work that he had done. So God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it, God rested from all his work that he had done in creation. God was resting on this temple of heaven and earth that he just made, because he has moved in the human being. That's what this story is about. That Marduk make human beings as his slaves to do the things that he doesn't want to do, to produce for him. But the Hebrew Bible says, no. The real God, the real Creator, has dominion over the chaos, and he made everything, and he made this whole universe into his dwelling place, and he has made us as his representatives here on earth. How do we know that this is God's world? How do we know that this world belongs to God? How do we know that this is his temple? The answer is, you look at you and me. When we look at each other, when we are at our best, we look at each other, we know that God exists. We look at each other, we know that this must be God's world. God rested on his temple. That is why Isaiah 66, it says, thus says Yahweh, thus says the Lord, heaven is my throne. The earth is my footstool. Heaven and earth, this is my temple. This is where heaven is my throne. The earth is my footstool. This is my throne room. The heaven and the earth. This is my temple. So, I already have a universal temple. God says, what is this house that you will build for me in Jerusalem? What is the place of my rest? You get it? You get it? God resting. What is the place of my rest? You think you're going to build this little structure in Jerusalem, And you're going to say that is my house? Is it? No, no. All these things my hand has made. So all these things came to be. The reason why all these things exist is because I commanded them to be. And the whole universe is my temple. You're not thinking that you're gonna build me a house that will be a place of my rest and you're gonna box me in that temple. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for a building. I'm not looking for a physical building. I'm not looking for a structure. I'm not looking for a cathedral. I'm not looking for a basilica. This is what I'm looking for. This is the one to whom I will look. He who is humble and contrite in spirit and trembles at my word. You see, I am looking for my image bearers who will demonstrate that I rule over heaven and earth, who will demonstrate that this is my temple. This is the one that I'm looking for. So the Bible continues much later. Paul says, do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit within you, whom you have from God? Do you know that God doesn't dwell in temples made by human hands? This is what he's looking for. He's looking for human beings made in his image, who is contrite in the heart and trembles at his word. These are those in whom he will reside, in whom he will rest. The ultimate resting place of God, resting place as in the place he rules over, is in the heart of man. It's in your heart, in my heart. We are this temple of the Holy Spirit. And one day, just as at the start of the Bible, in the beginning, when on high, God created the heavens and the earth. And at the end of the Bible, second last chapter, I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth had passed away. That's now gone. Now there's a new one, or a renewed one. The sea, the Tehom, Tiamat, that's forever gone. What is that? The holy city, New Jerusalem, this universal temple coming down out of heaven from God. And I cut short, it should have continued by saying, prepared as a bride, adorned for a husband. A bride. Who is this bride? Whose bride is that? The bride of the Lamb. Who is the Lamb? That's Christ. Who is the bride of the Lamb? The bride of Christ. Everyone said that's the church. Who's the church? We are the church. See, at the end, what we have is this universal temple. I saw a holy city, New Jerusalem, and that is you, and that is me. In the new heaven and a new earth, God's dwelling place. This is what the Genesis author had in mind. He's not talking about Big Bang. He's not talking about evolution. He's talking about what he's talking about Inoma Elish. That is what he is talking about. So here are some questions. Are you able to hear Genesis chapter 1 from the ears of an ancient Israelite? You need to read the Bible for all it's worth, beginning by for what it's worth in its original context to the original hearers. And and for the rest of the year, we are going to plow through certain aspects of the book of Genesis that we think is one thing because we live in the 21st century, but we want to be good and responsible tourists and explore the ancient world in weeks to come, and how Genesis speaks to the ancient world, speaks the word of God in a way that makes sense to them. It goes like, yes, this is God's word. Are you able to hear Genesis 1 as a follower of Christ? So it's not just some Babylonian myth that we're interacting with, but how God has his plan. God has his plan in Genesis 1 revealed to us, and that we are part of that plan. We are that plan, actually, to make us his dwelling place. You are. Your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit. You are so much. You are so much more than you think you are. You are amazing. You are a lot more than you think you are because of Jesus Christ. Number 3, how would you talk about the Creator and the world he made in the 21st century? See, in the 21st century, we live right now, like I said earlier, if God were to give us the book of Genesis today, it wouldn't be written the way it was written. It wouldn't be describing rakia and stuff like that. But the message is still the same. This afternoon, I spoke to Methodist College, Kuala Lumpur MCKL, and I told them the Kalam cosmology argument. I told them everything that began to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist. The universe has a cause. The cause of the universe is God. Now, I talk about the universe begin to exist. I mean the universe, the way we think about the universe now. I mean the Big Bang 13.8 billion years ago. I mean all of that, right? I do not mean rakia that separates the waters above and the waters below. But the message is still the same. The Creator God made all this. So how would you talk about the Creator and the world he made in the 21st century today? Let's stop here to get some questions.
Can I just ask a high-level question? Since
Yep.
this is like first lesson and things. Is there a reason why these things are not more clearly defined for us in mainline churches this way? Or is there like don't is it like a don't think too much about it, just understand God made the heavens and the earth, and we just sing all the songs and things? Or is it meant to be this complex for the average Christian?
It wasn't complex at all for the ancient people. Not at all. They're just born with that worldview. You know what I mean? When you're born in that worldview, you don't think that it's complex. Just like you learn your mother tongue, you learn your language. For example, you speak English. English is one of the weirdest language in the world, right? It just doesn't make sense. But you just intuitively know it. Now, somebody who's studying it as an adult, right? Somebody who's learning English as an adult will have to learn it the hard way. You know what I mean? For example, Chris, what is the past participle?
What?
What is a past participle?
Oh gosh, please don't ask me.
Exactly. But do you think you do
You
you
use it on a regular basis? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely I could tell when it's wrongly used, if ever, in a sentence.
Yeah, exactly. So imagine if you are
Native
like
speaker lah. Native speaker lah.
yeah. So imagine if you are not one who grew up like that, right? And you need to learn the language as an adult, right? So you enroll yourself in these language schools, and then they're going to teach you past participle, present continuous, present perfect tense, right? And you're gonna like, is English really that complicated?
To me, no lah.
But they're gonna ask the question, right? You see, because they're not native to that language, so they have to learn it the hard way. Now God has to make a choice. if God were to speak about the round earth and gravity, or how all of that is, right, we wouldn't have any struggle at all. Any one of us, the moment we hear that, yeah, that's just the world we're talking about, right? That's just the world. The earth goes around the sun, and the moon goes around the earth. That's just the way it is. We wouldn't struggle at all. But the ancient person would really struggle. The universe so difficult one, you understand what I mean? No? So therefore, God has to decide whether to write in our modern time, using our modern time things, okay, or using the ancient things. Trying to get the ancient people to speculate about the future, or trying to get us to research back the past. So it's much easier for us to research back the past than for the ancient Israelites to speculate the future. So it is simply because we're not native. That is why it is hard. But if we were native, then it would have been easy. So the Bible is easy, just that it's not for us. Easy. It's easy for the ancient Israelite. So for them, it'll be almost the same as God made the heavens and the earth. You know what I mean? It will be exactly like that.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So, because you're talking about a cosmic temple, and I suppose Genesis 1 was like first orally transmitted, and how come, at what point do they start thinking about temple? Is it when they're in the desert where the tabernacle is? I mean, the concept of like thinking about temple, I suppose, took a while to develop, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you are in the desert, yeah, that would be say, to the west of Israel, there's the Mediterranean Sea, and then to the east is all desert, right? And if you think about it, to the west is the Mediterranean Sea, to the east is the desert. So there's only this narrow strip of land that's livable. That's the Garden of Eden, right? And everything else will be formless and void. The sea is formless and void. Nothing dwells there. The desert is formless and void, and here we are, the Garden of Eden. So, in the land of Israel, the land flowing with milk and honey, heaven on earth. So when they read Genesis 1, they would have thought that, and so then when they think cosmically, as in when they think, okay, what about from God's perspective, right? Then from God's perspective, then everything is like a wasteland. Everything is like a wasteland. But then here is this mountain of God amidst the wasteland. This mountain of God, Mount Zion, where we built the temple, where that is true order, and that is true beauty. That's the Garden of Eden, the temple of God. So it's taken for granted that's just the way it is. Now, this is not just, of course, in ancient Israelite. I mean, people have been building temples forever. They saw some of it in Egypt. They saw some of it in Babylon. They have one on their own. Everybody has temples. Everybody had temples, and they tell a rather common story about how the gods made this place as a dwelling place, as a temple. For the Babylonians, is Marduk dividing up Tiamat into heavens and earth. For the Hebrews, is God creating the heavens and the earth in order to be his dwelling place. And so this is a competition of ideas between the Egyptians, the Babylonians, and the Israelites, is carving out, staking a claim right, to what reality is supposed to be. Okay. All right. Daniel, you want to distribute us into groups?